Hello, everyone. Welcome to 3Q New Mexico's business podcast. I am your host, Pam Myers, and my wonderful co-host is the fabulous Erica Yoakum. Our
Jazz hands.
guest, yes, dancing. Oh, we need a little dance in the background, maybe. Dancing hands. Our guest today is Daniel T Montoya. Daniel, welcome and thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
I want to read through your bio if I can. It's Daniel Montoya Esquire, right? You
Yes.
just recently returned to law practice. Um, you are on the in the firm of Pregenzer Baysinger Wideman and Sale PC. It's a woman-owned firm in Santa Fe, right?
Well, it's actually pronounced Pregenzer Wideman.
Sorry.
Pregenzer Baysinger Wideman Sale. So you got that wrong. Yeah. But tricky. And we are our headquarters is actually in Albuquerque, but I manage here in the Santa Fe office. So we do have an office right across the street from Christus St. Vincent Hospital.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a good landmark. And you do estate planning, elder law, and then trust and estate administration. Is that correct?
Yeah, and within elder law, there's a wide range of activities, including like Medicaid planning, long-term planning, tax planning. But we also we're a real premier firm here in New Mexico for helping people with disabilities navigate the legal system for their families. So to the extent that somebody has a family member that may have a disability that they need help kind of navigating the world of services and available options for them. This firm has really established itself as a premier firm for that area of the law.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah,
That's
I'd known that 15 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You graduated from Columbia, right?
That's correct. College and law school. Yep.
Yep. And then you moved back because you had left New Mexico. You worked in New York City for 15 years, and then you came back here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What brought you back?
I worked on Wall Street. I graduated from Columbia, and generally what happens is the law firms go and recruit you from the law school, and they did, and they recruited me. So I stayed in New York, and then I came back. My father had had a massive stroke, and at that point, my parents were living here. My mother was from northern New Mexico in a small community called Penasco, and they had moved here in '77 to help take care of my grandfather. My grandmother had passed away from cancer, and they came back here to take care of him. And then it kind of changed my home. Then my father in 1996 had a massive stroke, and so I decided to come back here to get to know my parents as an adult, because coming here 1 week a year or whatever I was doing wasn't enough to really know the logistics of their personal lives, and I really wanted to have a more intimate connection with them before they passed. And I thought he would pass, but he lived 10 more years. So by then I was pretty much entrenched in New Mexico.
Yeah. Well, that's a big culture shock from New York to New Mexico. Did you find that because you were born here, correct?
Well, I was actually born in Denver and grew up in a suburb of Denver, but I spent my summers on a farm in Penasco, on my grandparents' farm. So, all the kids my mother was one of 12. So all the grandkids would come and hoe the fields and herd the cows. And back then they didn't even have an indoor bathroom as an outhouse. So we kind of grew up, I grew up knowing what life was like in the old New Mexico West. And then, so moving back here wasn't too difficult. But at that point, I really wanted also a more natural experience, skiing, hiking, nature. So it was it was calling me anyway to come back, to come somewhere. And I had thought about California, and I was actually in California when my father had the stroke. But I decided to come here, and that's where I ended up. I first moved to just north of Taos, and then I eventually moved to Pilar, And then I ended up living in a little town called Ojosarco, which is on the high road to Taos. And I stayed there for 17 years, and then eventually made my way more to Santa Fe. But
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. That's quite a
Yeah,
journey.
I've got
yeah, so
cities to
I
go.
went
I
real
gotta go
nature. I went
now.
became a real nature bunny for a long time. So that was kind of a cool thing. And some dogs found me and adopted me, and we started hiking and whatnot. So it was good. It was all good.
Sorry, Erica, what were you saying?
No, I was saying so one of the things that I found about New Mexico that's really amazing to me is like there's the public face of New Mexico. There's the stuff that like that if you were just glancing at New Mexico or looking at Albuquerque, whatever, you would see things that when you live here, you realize that's like this thick.
Right.
The under below that there's like a million of these little tiny cities, and some of them are hundreds of years old, and
Right.
they have like incredible histories and beautiful landmarks and great places, and the farming and the like you said, the families that have been on the farm for 100 and something years and all of that. It's always amazing to me. So I said what I was saying is now I've got more cities to go look up. Like I
Right.
gotta go look up all those, Ojo de Sarco. I gotta go look all that up because like where is that? It's like a treasure hunt in New Mexico all the time. And
Yeah.
I've said it's down to the neighborhood level. Like the first time I came to Los Lunas, I was like, I'm never living here. I cannot believe people live here. Oh my God, right? It was like shocking to me. And we just come from Denver. We were in Centennial in Denver, the suburb of Denver. And so coming here was like, because it's like you drive down the road and it's, I've said Pam's heard me say this 100 times. Crack house, mansion.
Oh.
And it's like or you drive by this row of houses and you go, oh my gosh, and then you turn a corner and it's all custom built, gorgeous homes. It's like you never know. New Mexico's the Cracker Jack box. You just never know when you're going to turn the corner and there's a prize that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like you've named off a bunch of cities. I got to go find them now because there's always so many interesting things to see in New Mexico.
Right. When I moved to Ojosarco, I was told that there were like 230 people on Mother's Day in Ojosarco. They counted on Mother's Day because everybody would come home to visit their mother.
Love it.
That little town. There used to actually be a post office there, but that closed years and years and years ago.
Wow.
And so and that had a little store that the family ran next to the post office, but that closed. But when I moved to Ojosarco, I had been working for Taos. I started Taos Community Foundation. I was the first employee. So I was driving and traveling to Taos and started Taos Community Foundation. And so that kind of gave me an access to community, nonprofits, all those worlds that come with a community foundation.
Yeah.
And Liz Bremner was I don't know if you know of Liz Bremner, but she was the director of Santa Fe Community Foundation. She was kind of my mentor. So kudos to Liz, if anybody knows her. But she kind of helped me get started with Taos Community Foundation, and now it's up and thriving. And I understand they just appointed their first CEO. So it's nice to see that happening.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah, and then from there I went to work at Heritage Trust Company of New Mexico, which is an independent trust company, state chartered. So it's chartered similar to a state bank by the state of New Mexico. And I did that for 22 years or something, and ran a trust company. And basically, a trust company provides trustee services for families and their loved ones, basically, and that's part of estate planning. And that's what sort of led me to this law firm, because it's basically the same kind of, it's the same category of work, but now rather than administering a trust, I'm actually writing the trust agreement that establishes the trust.
Yeah. Wow.
So do people have to have a lot of money to set up a trust?
No, it really depends on, it's an estate planning question. So
Okay.
somebody really needs to look at what they need to accomplish in terms of how they're setting up their family for the future and how they're navigating their own lives today. Some people set up a trust because they just don't want to have to their family deal with probate or have anything enter into the domain of probate when they pass. So a trust will help you avoid probate. The key, though, is that you have to make sure you get everything into the trust before you pass. Otherwise, your bank account sitting outside of the trust is going to require probate, probably, depending on its size. So, it isn't as simple as just writing a trust agreement and then it's done. The individuals who establish the trust have to then make sure the assets and everything get retitled and et cetera. But it's a real good planning technique, and a lot of people do it for that reason, or because they just want to make sure that they have a solid plan in place for themselves today and then their family in the future.
Right.
And then there can also be trusts that can come out of settlements. Let's say somebody gets injured in a car accident, et cetera, and maybe they're injured or they're disabled to some degree or other. Then maybe a trust is the appropriate vehicle for them too. So there's a lot of different ways and different types of trusts, but we also just do estate planning. So somebody might just need a will. They might need a healthcare power of attorney or a financial power of attorney to make sure that somebody can take care of their affairs. What I've seen in my career is a lot more people are getting sort of the Alzheimer's diseases, and it's really good to have a healthcare power of attorney in place so that somebody can help you make medical decisions, and a financial power of attorney to make financial decisions. So there's a lot of reasons why somebody should think about estate planning and getting their affairs in order. Since COVID happened, it's mushroomed in terms of the people who are thinking about what could or couldn't happen to them. So the amount of business is kind of overwhelming, really. When I told people I was going to leave the trust company and practice law again, they were like, "Oh my God, thank you. We can't keep up. I'm 3 months out with appointments. We need more estate planning attorneys." So it was kind of interesting to see and hear from other lawyers just thrilled with me re-entering the lawyer domain, because they just needed somebody to refer to because they just can't take the volume here.
Well, I
And
think
I've heard that's limited in New Mexico.
Yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening experience for a lot of people because they were seeing otherwise healthy people die of COVID. And it was like, oh shit, it could be, it could be anybody. It could be me. It could be, and it's a matter of days. It's not, it was really, for a lot of people in a lot of places, it was really eye-opening to realize that life is fleeting. And it can change in an instant. So to take care of that so that you don't have to, that's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah. You don't want to leave those things up to just chance. I mean, we had a friend years ago that the woman lived here. She was from Germany and didn't have any family here, and she passed away. She had quite a bit of money in her bank account it was in a small town in Connecticut. And so everybody knew each other. Right. But she didn't have a will. And basically it just all went out to attorney fees and what have you.
Yeah.
She didn't have anything in place.
And sometimes, we call that dying intestate, meaning you don't have a will. But to the extent that somebody were to pass away without a will, they may not want it to go to their family for whatever reason, but it will. So, and if ultimately there's no one, it can end up with the state, and that is not what somebody wants. So probably, especially if you have loved ones. New Mexico doesn't recognize domestic partnerships. So to the extent that somebody is not getting married and wants to make sure that their partner or significant other is protected, they should really set up an estate plan and really dictate out in those documents what they want to happen, because that will protect their estate.
I did not realize that. So the state does not recognize domestic partnerships of any kind.
Well, there's a caveat. There's always a caveat. They don't recognize them in New Mexico. If another state recognizes domestic partnerships, then New Mexico will recognize their domestic partnership here. It's to me, it's bizarre, but why would a domestic partnership in California be valid in New Mexico, but one established in New Mexico isn't? But that's the law right now.
So you do the will and you put, and I read this one cracked me up and made perfect sense. If you don't want to leave anything to somebody, you leave them like $1, because this is what I read. You tell me if it's right. I don't even know if it's in New Mexico, so that they can't contest saying, well, I was left out. That means he forgot about me. I'm going to go fight this or whatever. If you say, I'm only giving Uncle Bob $1, it means you thought about it, and you were definitely not leaving them anything else. Is that like a true thing, or?
Well, you can exclude people in your will.
Yeah.
You can leave people out, and it can be valid. And you can also have a no contest clause in your document, so that to the extent that somebody is going to try and fight the will in some way, or the trust, that it can exclude them by the fact that they're contesting it. So, there's ways to
That's interesting.
yeah, but you have to put that in your documents, and so
Right.
to the extent that you want to do that. But I think, the idea being, it's just better to have everything spelled out in your documents. You set up your estate. You worked hard, made whatever assets, or even if you inherited them, however they came to you, they belong to you, and you should really set up an estate plan to dictate how those are distributed. But in addition, while you're alive, you may need somebody to step in as a power of attorney in some capacity, either a financial or healthcare. So you definitely want to think about who that would be, and then get those documents in place. A great thing about New Mexico is years ago they came up with a statutory form power of attorney, so that banks could not refuse to honor it. So it is dictated by statute, and everybody uses the same form now. And banks can't say, well, we don't like your form, we're not going to honor that power of attorney anymore. So that's it's a good way to make sure that they may say, well, we want you to sign our power of attorney, but at that point the person may not have capacity, who's actually needing the help, and then they can't sign the power of attorney anymore. So but New Mexico said, let's solve this problem, let's make a one form that everybody uses, and then nobody can contest it. So that is what's happened, and it's a good way to make sure that somebody has the help and the care they need. And that doesn't have to be a partner, or it could be a friend, it could be a family member, whoever a person wants to name to be their agent. So and usually in the healthcare power of attorney, we include some directives about end of life as well. So there's some documentation about what a person wants to happen. And you can also include like organ donation and things like that. So we really try and listen to people and identify what they want, and then put that in writing, get it all signed up, and then they can go back to their lives and not think about it again until such time as maybe either they want to make a change or it becomes active.
Right. Wow.
If you want to be planted under a tree, you can do that.
Right.
Yeah. And we do, and then we do like special needs trusts. So let's say somebody is on state benefits, they're getting Medicaid, so we can help navigate those arenas too, because that doesn't mean that a person can't have extra resources. They just can't control them. So you can set up a special needs trust, for instance, that will allow them to still get some supplemental funding for things that they might need or want, but it won't jeopardize their state and federal benefits. So they don't lose the benefits, because that's one of the keys, is you don't want to have somebody lose the benefits that they're receiving if they're getting those through the government.
Right. Oh, never even would have thought about that. So that's
And then people, and there's situations, for instance, in an income diversion trust, somebody might be elderly, they may need to be in a facility, but they make too much money to qualify for Medicaid. And they have too much income coming, Social Security, pension, whatever, but they don't make enough to pay for the facility. So you can set up a trust whereby a portion of their income goes into that trust, the remainder goes to pay for the facility, and then the government pays the rest, so they can be in the facility. And then at the end of the person's life, the government will get whatever in the trust, to the extent that it's needed to pay the bill that was paid for by Medicaid while they were alive.
Wow. But in the meantime, it protects them and enables them to be able to go into the facility of their choice.
Exactly.
Or a
Exactly.
cruise ship. I'm retiring on a cruise ship. They're cheaper than most
Well, we have,
homes are. They are. They're $3,000 a month on a cruise ship, as opposed to $6,000 a month in a old folks home.
well,
I mean,
it has to be a skilled nursing care facility, et cetera. But you
well,
can't.
there's doctors on board. That's I mean,
You can't-
seriously.
you can't
There's
do
a
everything.
morgue on board. I mean,
But,
come on.
it's planning. So basically, you're trying to
planning.
figure out, to the extent that somebody, wants to be in that facility or needs to be for whatever reason, maybe they even have some dementia, and so they
Right.
really need to have that kind of 24-hour care. Then there are ways to help navigate our systems to give them the ability to have those kind of resources and be in a facility where they wouldn't otherwise qualify financially. Maybe they just don't make enough money,
Right.
those kinds of things. So, we kind of look at a person's situation, and I can't even. I was thinking, how many calls are we getting a day? It's just amazing to me how much business comes through, how many phone calls we get every day, just looking for help for a lot of different reasons, but primarily estate planning. But there's a lot of other reasons. Somebody could be the beneficiary of a trust, and the trustee is not providing them with any information, and they may need help getting that information from the trustee so they understand what's happening. So there could be a lot of reasons why somebody would come to a firm like Pregenzer Baysinger Wideman Sale, and then we would try and help them and navigate those situations as best we can. Probate is a big one because a lot of people do have wills, and they need to go through the probate process once the person passes to make the distributions and honor their family, and then we can help with that. So I have several of those going right now, and then there's a significant amount of just elder law kind of questions, long-term planning, tax planning that we do here, and we have some real expertise here at the firm. I'm not an expert in tax planning, but I have colleagues who are teaching me very quickly how to navigate this stuff. It's complicated. I was doing trust administration work, which is from my perspective fairly limited, because at that point the trust is set up. All you're doing is, it may sound complicated, but you're managing the money, making distributions, and working with the beneficiary of the trust, and maybe settling some estates. But when you're doing the planning side of it, you really have to think through so many issues, and there's so many legal ramifications to things that you might set up that you really do have to think about. One of the issues that's coming is that the estate tax exemption, which is over 13 million now, but you don't pay tax on your estate if it's under 13. I think it's 0.61 million, but that is scheduled to sunset. So depending on who wins the election, it could drop down significantly. So if you did have a large estate, then you might want to go back and talk to your estate planning attorney if the law isn't changed, because it is going to sunset, I think, at the end of 24. So depending on who wins the election, might dictate what happens next in terms of tax planning.
Wow.
So is it your opinion that everybody should have a plan in place? If like I'm a normal homeowner, I've got a few cars, I don't have a lot in the bank, that kind of thing. Am I a candidate for all of this?
Well, I think you should have. I think it's not a bad idea to have a healthcare power of attorney with healthcare directives in it. That's one thing that people probably should have, even if you're young, because anybody can get injured or have a disability that could require somebody to step in and help you navigate that situation with medical providers, et cetera. But having a will is not a bad thing. If you have a house and you want to make sure it goes to the right people, you may or may not love your siblings or whomever is in your life, and you might want to go to your partner. So it's good to get all that in place and think about that sort of thing. It isn't limited just to elderly people, because as we know,
Rich people.
or rich people, anybody can pass away. And if you have any assets, land, what I found in New Mexico is a lot of people are land rich, but they're not cash rich. So the land has to be decided on. Now, that doesn't have to necessarily be a will. There's other vehicles like a transfer and death deed, where you can record a deed today, and then as soon as you pass and the person has a death certificate, they can go and record that with the county where the property is located, and then that house or land transfers to that individual. So that's kind of a nice vehicle. So it's all this planning, but a lot of it can be done so that if you did pass, you have it going to the person that you intended it to go to. The good thing about it, like a transfer and death deed, though, is they can be changed even if you recorded it today. It's not active until you actually pass. So you can sell it. You can still sell it. It doesn't control you or bind you. It's just there. If indeed you passed, then it would go to that person that you named.
Wow. Wow. And Daniel, how can people reach you if they would like to contact you?
Well, I am here in Santa Fe primarily, but right now I'm working 2 days in Albuquerque as I'm kind of learning the ropes. But I'm in Santa Fe, so they would just call our general number and then set up an appointment. We have a whole intake team that kind of identifies the issue that the person needs to have addressed. It could be estate planning, but it could be Medicaid planning. It could be a special needs trust. It could be a real estate issue. It could be, something to do with probate. So they would call the general number, and they could ask for me, or they could just say, I want somebody who's expertise in this particular area. And then, but generally people who want somebody in Santa Fe might ask for me. And then they would take the information.
Tell me what that telephone number is. I'm going to put it up here. So
okay, 505-872-0505.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, and then they would call. There's an intake process, and they would go ahead and make an appointment, and then come in, and we would talk and see what they need. And sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes people have an idea of what they think they need, but when you sit down and talk to them, you start doing the planning, it changes. So
I would think, because we all think we know what we need, and then then you talk to the expert, and they go, "No, honey."
Yeah, because a lot of times people say, "Well, I need a trust." Well, and it turns out you don't really need a trust, because I see what you're trying to accomplish, and we can do that in X, Y, and Z way, and we can set that up so that it can go in exactly as you intend it to, but it doesn't require a trust.
Right.
Wow.
Some people, and that's kind of good, because sometimes a trust isn't necessary, because some people may have all their bills being paid from a bank account already, et cetera. If you establish a trust, you probably have to change that bank account.
All of that
you have
stuff,
your
right.
income coming in, you're gonna have to go and change all that, and sometimes people don't want to deal with that. So, you have to kind of look at the practicalities of somebody's life too, and make sure that it's something that fits them and suits them in terms of their needs. But also, can they accomplish it, getting everything in place? Or was it a waste of time because they died and the trust never got funded anyway, and they just paid for it, but they didn't actually fund the trust or move the assets into the trust? So you kind of have to make sure that you're doing right by the people you're meeting with, and really talk to them and understand their situation.
Perfect.
So we're trying to do that. And from my perspective, coming back to practicing law, it's a whole different arena, and I'm sort of mystified by it. I used to tell people, "Oh, I'm a trust officer," and people would go, "What's that?" But I tell people I'm an attorney now, and it's like, "Oh, everybody knows." And there's sort of a different. There's sometimes a good attitude and sometimes a bad attitude about it, but either way, it's people have a certain level of respect for attorneys. So I think in estate planning, people understand that you're really just helping people navigate kind of end of life issues primarily. But like I said, it could be something else that is relevant today for your situation, just to clean things up, or get a trust in place today. And you may live another 30 years, but that might be the best planning vehicle for you.
I have at least another 43.
Okay.
I'm living to 100. That's my goal.
Oh, I see. Okay. So do you have the date picked yet, or?
No.
I've heard people who tell me they have the date picked.
Really?
When they're going to die. Yeah, it's interesting.
Wow.
They think they know. So
Yeah.
A
The
what?
people, there are websites where you can go in and you put in a bunch of things and it tells you when you're going to die. I'm like, who does that?
Yeah,
Who goes and looks? Because God, it's hard enough getting past like, my mom was alive that for this many years. I got to live past that, right? Like,
right. Well, the other thing that people, a lot of people don't have children or don't have families, but they want to do charitable giving. So
right.
Right.
Oh, right.
charitable giving is another estate planning opportunity for people that they should think about because, they may need the money today, but they want to leave it to maybe a community foundation or a nonprofit or do something unique that
Lapdogs of New Mexico.
or exactly. So there's a lot of different
Right.
places where people can leave their assets, but again, it's their right to decide that, and I encourage people to think about it. It doesn't have to be elaborate. You don't have to have a lot going on in your life financially or otherwise, but it's good to have at least some thought about it.
Yeah.
Even if you're just talking to your family and saying, well, if God forbid I ever had a calamity, here's what I want to happen. Just even to have those conversations is not a bad idea, just because, or with a partner or a spouse, just so people kind of know what you want. Most people are going to follow your wishes. We've had a few instances where, in my old career, where we came in as the personal representative. A personal representative in New Mexico is the exact same thing as executor, but we came in as personal representative. But the person and the person wanted to be cremated, but one of the family members had already jumped in and buried him, and so it was
Oh.
like against the wishes because that's what they believed in. So sometimes, your best laid plans aren't followed, but most 99% of the time, if you have those conversations with your family, they're going to follow them, or or whoever is in your life that's significant to you. So, I always encourage people, at least have the conversation. If you don't put anything in writing, at least you've started the discussion and you've already started your thought process, because that is important also to you be thinking about it and you having some idea about what you want. Because things do happen and we don't know, life can change on a dime.
Right. It can. You really have to take the time to get to know somebody, to know their financial situation, their personal situation, their health. I mean, you really have to delve into a lot of that, it sounds like.
Well, we have a pretty elaborate intake form where they lay all that out. We ask them to complete that before they come in. So we can get pretty quickly apprised of what the situation is or what they want to happen, or what they're dealing with. So it's pretty elaborate, and all estate planning attorneys kind of have the same process. So I think it's a good way for people to have a quick and efficient turnaround and getting documents in place pretty quickly. We generally say we're about 3 weeks out from the time I meet with somebody to the time we get their estate planning documents ready for them to sign, assuming there's not too many changes. People sometimes look at their documents and they're like, oh, now we thought about that. We don't want that after all. It made us think about it. So, but, to the extent that we can get that done, we try and move it along fairly quickly. And right now I'm new, so I don't have, I'm not, months and months out for an appointment. So if somebody does need help, I'm here and I can assist people, especially in Santa Fe.
Is it expensive to get this done?
Well, it depends on what somebody's doing. So I would probably say anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000, depending on what you're doing and how elaborate and sophisticated your assets are. So let's say you have a lot of LLCs and real estate and rental properties, it gets more complicated.
Right. Yeah.
So it just depends on what your need is, but just to get healthcare powers of attorney and financial power of attorney in place, those only exist while you're alive. Once you pass, those go away, then your will would take over. But to get those 3 documents, and maybe if you want to be cremated, that document in place, that's a good thing. So there's it can be simple, and just to get the basics in, then at least you have something done and you have something that would guide your assets after you pass, or even while you're alive if you needed help managing your financial or healthcare.
Brilliant.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your honest answers. Yeah. And that, no, prevarication on cost. Just to, thank you. I appreciate that. That's
Right. Yeah. You've been super informative, Daniel.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't hold me to the numbers because again,
Well,
everybody
right.
comes in and you never know what somebody's financial
Exactly.
situation is. But you know, there are some attorneys who charge flat fees, and we just charge hourly. So it depends because if somebody has a lot of changes and revisions over and over again, obviously it's going to cost more.
Right.
But we try and
You
we
have
try
a
and get it
jumping off
right
idea
the
in
first
your
time.
brain, Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's good to have a a jumping off point in my brain, like
Yeah.
have a general idea, so I'm not shocked if I go in and it's $10,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My Jeep isn't even worth that. You know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
and you know, our firm does do some litigation, and obviously litigation kind of matters are going to cost a lot more. Oh, and if
Right.
we're going to set up a guardianship for somebody and a conservatorship, sometimes somebody needs that because they're no longer competent and they can't manage their own affairs at all. And so that can cost a little more because you have to hire 3 different professionals to give reports to the court, and the court has to make a decision, and it gets very elaborate. But if somebody needs that, you just got to do it because if somebody needs a guardian, you got to make sure that that's in place for them. Otherwise, what would happen if somebody can't make decisions for them and they're incapable of doing that? So all those kind of things that we talk about, and we're here to help. So to the extent we can, we're thrilled and ready and able to help people navigate their own particular situation. But again, that's that discussion that you have on the front end and really understand what somebody needs.
And
Awesome.
okay, so it's pbwslaw.com
Yeah.
because nobody can pronounce any of those names. No, kidding. pbwslaw.com, 505-872-0505. And you can ask for Daniel.
Yes.
You can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can also ask you could say, I want somebody with this expertise because I already know that I need help in this particular area. So, there's a lot of room to decide what you need. But like I said, I'm primarily in Santa Fe. So if somebody is in Santa Fe and wants to just deal with people in or northern New Mexico, don't want to go further south than Santa Fe, then I'm here. So
Awesome.
That's great. Awesome, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please tune in again next week.
Thank you. That was great. I appreciate